Hello there, and welcome to the Healing Insight channel. Deep beneath the forest floor, a silent conversation is happening that mirrors your own need for connection. Ancient mother trees are sending chemical pulses to nourish their saplings, practicing a form of attachment theory that predates humanity. As you listen, let these ancestral rhythms synchronize with your breathing for deep restoration. What if the secret to lowering your cortisol lies in the invisible breath of the woods? Science shows that forest phytoncides physically signal your nervous system to enter a state of total safety and calm. Tonight, we explore how the symbiosis of the ecosystem provides the perfect blueprint for your sleep. You are never truly alone when you understand the profound cooperation of the mycorrhizal network. This hidden web of life ensures that no tree struggles in isolation, proving that collective survival is nature's highest law. Let the soothing reality of this deep-rooted resilience guide your mind into a peaceful, undisturbed slumber. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax. Let your body soften, allow your eyes to grow heavy, and let your mind unwind as we explore this fascinating world. Let's begin. The sounds that surround you right now are doing something quietly remarkable to your inner ear. When you hear a vowel like O or U, these low-frequency sounds travel through the air and land softly against the delicate structures inside your cochlea, sending signals that your brain has learned to associate with safety and slowness. The inner ear is designed to detect danger through sharp, high-pitched sounds, the crack of a branch, the sudden shout, the alarm that jolts you awake. But the opposite is also true. When sound arrives in long, rounded waves, moving slowly like honey poured from a jar, your auditory system begins to recognize the signature of calm. These low-frequency vowels resonate at a pitch that matches the deep hum of a mother's voice, the distant rumble of thunder over safe shelter, the purr of contentment that animals make when they are at rest. Your ear does not need to work hard to process these sounds. They wash over the tiny hair cells without demanding sharpness or attention. What makes this fascinating is that the inner ear is not simply a receiver. It is also a translator, converting the physics of sound into the chemistry of feeling. When those O and U sounds arrive, they create a gentle vibration that moves from the eardrum through the ossicles, those three tiny bones with names that sound like poetry themselves, the malleus, the incus, the stapes, and into the fluid-filled chambers of the cochlea. That fluid ripples slowly when the sound is soft and low, and the ripple sends a message to the brain that says there is no urgency here, there is no threat approaching, there is only the steady unfolding of something slow and safe. This is why lullabies across every culture favor vowels that linger, sounds that do not snap shut, but instead hang in the air like mist. The brain begins to quiet its vigilance because the very texture of what it hears tells it that the world is soft tonight. And your body knows this language without needing to learn it consciously. From the moment you were born, you responded to the quality of sound around you, to the tone of voices, to the rhythm of breathing nearby, to the presence or absence of threat encoded in every auditory signal. When the sounds were harsh and sudden, your tiny nervous system activated its alarm responses, preparing even your infant body for danger. But when the sounds were low and smooth and continuous, when they arrived like waves lapping gently at a shore, your nervous system released its grip, allowed your muscles to soften, permitted your eyelids to grow heavy. This is not something that changes as you age. The same mechanisms are still operating now, still listening, still translating sound into safety or danger, still deciding whether this moment calls for alertness or for rest. And the low-frequency vowels you are hearing, the O sounds that round and open, the U sounds that draw out and deepen, these are telling your inner ear telling the fluid in your cochlea, telling the neural pathways that connect your ear to your brain, that this is a moment for rest, that the world has grown gentle, that it is safe to let your guard down and allow sleep to approach. The resonance of these sounds does something else as well, something that happens almost at the edge of perception. When a low-frequency sound wave enters your ear, it does not stop at the cochlea. It continues to move through the bones of your skull, creating subtle vibrations that your brain can feel even when it cannot consciously hear them. This is called bone conduction, and it is one of the oldest pathways for sound perception, a pathway that existed even before ears evolved their current intricate structure. Your jawbone, your cheekbones, the entire architecture of your skull becomes a sounding board for these low, gentle vowels, and that vibration creates a kind of massage from within, a gentle rhythmic stimulation that the brain interprets as soothing, as comforting, as safe. Imagine the feeling of a cat purring against your chest, the way that vibration seems to settle something deep inside you, seems to communicate peace at a level below words. The low-frequency vowels are doing something similar, creating a gentle hum that your skull bones carry inward, that reverberates through the fluid around your brain, that whispers to your most primitive neural structures that all is well, that the body can release its tension, that consciousness can begin to thin and drift like fog lifting slowly from a morning field. And as your inner ear continues this gentle work, processing these rounded, elongated vowel sounds, your brain begins to shift its priorities in ways you may not consciously notice. When you are fully alert, when you are engaged in the tasks of the day, your mind is busy with definitions, with parsing meaning, with analyzing the structure of sentences and extracting information as quickly as possible. Your prefrontal cortex, that sophisticated region behind your forehead responsible for executive function and decision-making, is working at full capacity, tracking multiple streams of data, making predictions, forming judgments, keeping you organized and responsive. But as you move toward rest, as the day releases its demands and the evening deepens into night, something subtle begins to change. The brain stops demanding clarity and precision. It stops caring so much about what the words mean and starts responding instead to how they sound, to the melody of the voice, to the rise and fall of intonation, to the rhythm that flows beneath the meaning like a current beneath the surface of a river. This is not a failure of attention. It is a natural transition, a necessary one, where the analytical centers of your mind begin to release their grip and allow the more ancient, more instinctive parts of your brain to take over. Those older regions, the limbic system, the brainstem, the areas that govern emotion and basic survival, do not need definitions. They do not need to understand every word or follow every logical progression. They are listening for something deeper, something that lives in the tone and the tempo, something that tells them whether the environment is safe enough to let go. When a voice moves slowly, when it does not hurry or demand, when it allows sentences to stretch and breathe, when it favors the melodic qualities of speech over the informational content, the brain recognizes this as a signal that there is no emergency, no need to stay sharp, no reason to keep the gates of consciousness fully open. The melodic qualities of speech begin to act like a gentle hand on your shoulder, guiding you downward, softly, without force, into a state where thinking becomes optional and feeling takes the lead. You can notice this shift happening even now, perhaps the way your attention may be starting to wander slightly, the way you are less concerned with remembering each specific detail and more interested in the overall sensation of listening, the way the voice feels rather than what it says. This is your brain doing exactly what it is designed to do in the evening hours, moving from beta wave activity, the fast, alert brainwaves of waking consciousness, into alpha waves, those slower, more relaxed rhythms that signal the beginning of rest. And as this transition continues, as your prefrontal cortex begins to quiet and your limbic system begins to take the lead, you may notice that the specific words themselves start to matter less and less. What matters now is the music of the language, the way syllables flow together, the way consonants and vowels create textures and patterns that your ear finds pleasing, that your nervous system finds soothing. This is the power of melodic intonation, the understanding that human speech is not just a conveyor of information, but also an instrument capable of creating atmospheres, of shaping emotional states, of guiding the listener toward calm or excitement, toward alertness or drowsiness. And right now, in this moment, the melody being created is one of deepening rest, of gentle descent, of soft invitation into sleep. The voice does not spike with excitement. It does not jolt with surprise. It does not demand your attention with sudden changes in volume or pace. Instead, it moves like water, flowing steadily, predictably, creating a sonic environment that your nervous system can trust, can relax into, can allow to wash over you without needing to analyze or resist. The way sentences are built, the way words are chosen, the way consonants land against your awareness, all of this creates a texture that your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning and decision-making and staying in control, begins to recognize as restful. Soft dental consonants, the sounds made when the tongue touches gently against the teeth, sounds like th and s and f, these do not jolt or startle. They do not demand that your attention snap into focus. Instead, they function almost like a natural white noise, a consistent, unobtrusive presence that helps to mask the sharper sounds of the world around you, the distant traffic, the hum of appliances, the settling of the building, all those little noises that might otherwise catch your attention and pull you back toward waking. When you hear these soft consonants repeating gently throughout the narrative, your prefrontal cortex, which has been working all day to keep you organized and alert and on task, begins to understand that it can step back now, that it does not need to monitor every detail, that it is safe to let the executive functions dim and allow the mind to drift. This is the gift of soft consonants. They create a sonic environment that feels smooth and frictionless, where nothing catches or snags, where everything flows. The brain does not need to brace itself against harsh plosives, those hard sounds like P and T and K that can feel like tiny interruptions, little moments where the nervous system has to decide whether something important is happening, whether attention is required, whether a response needs to be prepared. But soft consonants bypass that question entirely. They arrive and pass without incident, like a breeze moving through an open window, present but undemanding, soothing in their consistency. And in that consistency, your prefrontal cortex finds permission to rest, to stop organizing, to stop solving, to simply be present in a space where the sounds themselves are doing the work of calming, where you do not need to do anything, where you can simply receive. This is one of the great reliefs of bedtime, the understanding that for these hours, you are released from the obligation to manage, to control, to direct. You can surrender to the process, trusting that sleep will find you, that your body knows how to do this, that you have done it thousands of times before and will do it thousands of times again, and that all you need to do right now is allow the sounds to guide you, allow the soft dental consonants to create their smooth pathway, allow your mind to stop working and start drifting. What is happening in your body right now, even as you listen, even as you feel your thoughts beginning to slow and scatter, is a process called entrainment, where your internal rhythms begin to synchronize with external patterns. Your heart does not beat at random. It follows a rhythm, a tempo that can be influenced by what you hear, by what you see, by what you feel. When a voice speaks in long, slow sentences, when it does not rush to the end, but instead takes its time, allowing each phrase to unfold at a leisurely pace, never hurrying, never pressing forward with urgency, your heart begins to notice. It begins to slow its own rhythm to match. This is not a conscious decision. You cannot will your heart to beat more slowly simply by thinking about it, simply by commanding it to relax. But your heart is always listening to the environment, always adjusting, always trying to find harmony with the world around it. When the world is loud and fast, when sounds come in quick bursts, when voices speak rapidly and urgently, your heart speeds up to keep pace, preparing your body for action, for response, for the demands that seem to be coming. When the world is soft and slow, when sounds arrive in gentle waves, when voices take their time and allow space between phrases, your heart softens too, finding a deeper, steadier rhythm that matches the gentle unfolding of sound. This is the entrainment effect, and it is one of the most powerful tools available for guiding the body toward rest. A slow sentence structure does more than convey information. It creates a template, a rhythmic blueprint that your resting pulse can follow, allowing your cardiovascular system to ease into a state of coherence, where the heart and the breath and the nervous system all move together in a synchronized dance of calm. The fascinating part is that you do not need to try to make this happen. It happens on its own, quietly, below the level of conscious awareness, as the body recognizes the invitation and accepts it. Your heart rate variability, the natural fluctuation in the time between heartbeats, begins to increase, which is a sign of a healthy, flexible nervous system, a system that is not locked into the rigid patterns of stress and defense, but instead is flowing, adapting, responding to the gentle cues that rest is available. And as your heart slows, as the intervals between beats lengthen slightly, a signal is sent through your entire circulatory system, a signal that tells every cell, every organ, every tissue that the time for high alert has passed, that resources can now be redirected from vigilance to restoration, from defense to repair. As your heart begins to find this slower rhythm, as the entrainment effect deepens and your pulse settles into a gentle, steady cadence, your brain also begins to notice something else, something that makes the work of listening feel easier and easier with each passing moment. When sentences follow a predictable pattern, when they use repetitive grammatical loops, when they circle back to familiar structures again and again, the cognitive load required to process what you are hearing begins to drop. Your brain does not need to work hard to decode new information or adjust to unexpected syntax. It can relax into the pattern, knowing what is coming, feeling the safety of repetition, trusting that there will be no surprises, no sudden shifts that require a recalibration of attention. This is why children love to hear the same stories over and over, why lullabies use the same melodies night after night, why rituals of bedtime are so powerful in creating the conditions for sleep. The brain finds comfort in what it recognizes, in what it can predict, in what does not surprise. Repetition is not boring to a brain that is moving towards sleep. Repetition is restful. It means the mind does not need to stay alert for novelty or change. It can settle into the rhythm like settling into a familiar chair, knowing the shape of it, trusting the support, allowing the body to release its weight without fear of falling. And as the cognitive load decreases, as the brain stops working so hard to understand and analyze and track each new piece of information, the body begins to produce the chemistry of rest. The nervous system interprets this lack of effort as a sign that it is safe to shift gears, safe to move from the active alertness of the sympathetic state, the fight or flight response that has kept you ready and responsive throughout the day, into the calm restoration of the parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode that governs healing and recovery and sleep. Repetitive grammatical loops are not a flaw in the language. They are a feature, a deliberate invitation for the mind to stop striving and start resting. When you hear the same sentence structures returning, when you notice familiar phrases appearing again, your brain does not register this as redundancy or lack of creativity. It registers it as permission to stop trying to keep up, permission to stop memorizing and analyzing, permission to let the words wash over you like waves, each one similar to the last, each one reinforcing the message that there is nothing new to track, nothing urgent to remember, nothing that requires your active engagement. You can simply be here, simply listen, simply allow the repetition to lull you deeper and deeper into that space between waking and sleeping, where thoughts dissolve and consciousness begins to fragment into dreams. And there is something else happening too, something tied to the very endings of sentences, to the way each phrase resolves and completes, to the satisfaction of reaching a period and allowing a thought to finish before beginning another. When sentences end in predictable ways, when the rhythm of speech follows a pattern that the brain can anticipate, when there are no cliffhangers or unfinished thoughts left dangling in the air, something begins to shift in the body's chemistry. Evening melatonin, that gentle hormone that signals to every cell that the day is winding down, that darkness has arrived, that it is time to prepare for sleep, begins to be released more freely when the brain perceives safety and predictability. The body does not produce melatonin in response to commands or intentions. You cannot simply decide to release melatonin and have it happen. It produces melatonin when the environment, both internal and external, suggests that rest is appropriate, that the time for alertness has passed, that it is now safe to let the systems slow and the consciousness dim. Predictable sentence endings contribute to this perception because they create a sense of closure and completion, a feeling that nothing is left unresolved, nothing is demanding continued attention, nothing is pulling at your mind asking to be figured out or finished. Each sentence that ends softly, that does not leave you hanging or waiting, that brings its thought to a gentle conclusion before moving on to the next, tells the brain that it can let go of that thought, that it does not need to hold onto anything, that everything is being taken care of, that there is a structure and a flow that is reliable and trustworthy. And in that gentle release, repeated over and over, sentence after sentence, the pineal gland, that small endocrine gland deep in the center of your brain, begins its quiet work, secreting melatonin into the bloodstream, allowing it to travel through your body, reaching receptors in the brain and the organs, signaling to everything that the time for wakefulness is drawing to a close. The relationship between predictable sentence endings and the release of melatonin is a partnership between language and biology, where the structure of sound becomes a bridge into the chemistry of sleep. Your body is listening not just to the meaning of the words, but to their shape, their pattern, their reliability, and when it hears that everything is orderly, that everything is complete, that everything is predictable, it begins to trust that sleep is the right response, that lowering consciousness is safe, that the night can be surrendered to without fear. Now consider the sounds themselves, the specific texture of certain letters, certain combinations that your ear receives and your nervous system interprets in ways that bypass conscious thought entirely. The gentle S sound, that soft sibilance that moves through a sentence like water over stones, like wind through tall grass, carries with it a frequency that is deeply familiar to the human nervous system, deeply embedded in our evolutionary history. This sound mimics the natural frequency of wind moving through leaves, of water flowing over a surface, of the quiet hiss of rain against a window, of all those ambient sounds that filled the world long before human language existed, long before cities and machines, long before anything existed except the earth and the elements and the living things that learned to survive by understanding which sounds meant danger and which sounds meant peace. When you hear a gentle S sound, when it arrives without harshness, without the sharp edge of a hiss or a shout, without the aggressive quality that can make sibilance feel threatening, your parasympathetic nervous system begins to activate. This is the rest and digest system, the part of your autonomic nervous system that governs recovery, healing, digestion, cellular repair, immune function, and sleep. It is the opposite of the fight or flight response. It is the body's way of saying that the danger has passed, that resources can now be directed toward restoration instead of defense, that the time has come to lower the shields and allow the healing processes to begin. The sibilance effect is powerful because it bypasses the conscious mind entirely. You do not need to think about whether a sound is safe. Your nervous system knows. It has been shaped by millions of years of evolution to recognize the difference between the sounds of threat and the sounds of peace. The sudden crack of a branch might mean a predator. The roar of an animal might mean danger. But the soft susurration of wind through trees, the gentle sound of water moving, these are the sounds of a world that is simply existing, not attacking, not demanding, not threatening. And when those soft S sounds arrive, repeated gently throughout a narrative, woven into the fabric of the language like threads in a tapestry, they create a continuous signal to the parasympathetic nervous system that it is safe to engage, safe to take over from the sympathetic system, safe to guide the body into the deep rest it needs. Your ancestors knew these sounds. They fell asleep to them every night, lying in shelters of leaves and branches, listening to the wind, listening to the rain, listening to the world settling into darkness, and their bodies learned that these sounds meant safety, meant the predators were not near, meant the night could be trusted. And there is something else about these fricative sounds, these soft consonants that seem to linger in the air, that seem to continue even after they have been spoken, creating an atmosphere rather than simply delivering information. They provide a kind of auditory boundary, a gentle barrier between you and the sharper sounds of the outside world. When you are surrounded by soft fricatives, by sounds that flow and blend, by the repeated S and F and TH sounds that create a kind of cushion of sound around you, your brain begins to perceive a buffer, a protective layer of sound that insulates you from the unexpected noises that might otherwise pull you back toward alertness. This is the psychological comfort found in fricative sounds. They do not demand attention. They do not pierce through your awareness like an alarm. They simply exist as a consistent, gentle presence that helps to define the space you are in as a safe space, a restful space, a space where nothing harsh can reach you, where the world has grown soft and muffled and kind. This is why the whisper-like qualities of certain words are so effective in bedtime narratives. They feel intimate and close, as though the voice is speaking only to you, as though the world has narrowed to just this moment, just this sound, just this quiet exchange between the voice and your listening mind. The amygdala, that small almond-shaped structure deep in your brain that is responsible for detecting threats, for scanning the environment constantly for anything that might require a defensive response, has filters that are always running, always monitoring, always ready to raise an alarm if something dangerous appears. But whisper-like sounds, sounds that are soft and undemanding, sounds that arrive gently and leave gently, tend to bypass those filters entirely. The amygdala does not flag them as important. It does not raise an alarm. It does not send out the cascade of stress hormones that would prepare your body for action. It simply lets them pass, allowing them to reach the deeper, more restful parts of your brain without triggering the alertness that would normally accompany new information, without activating the vigilance that keeps you awake and watchful. And in that bypassing, in that permission to move through without resistance, the mind finds a pathway into rest, a way to receive sound without responding to it, a way to be present without being active, a way to listen without needing to do anything about what is heard. The voice you are hearing right now is not speaking to you in short, clipped phrases. It is not hurrying to reach a conclusion or racing through information as though there is somewhere else it needs to be. It is using long, flowing clauses, sentences that stretch and unfold, that move like a river moving through a landscape, taking its time, following the contours of the terrain, never rushing, never forcing, never trying to compress what wants to be spacious into something small and quick. And what this does, quietly and without you needing to think about it, without you needing to make any conscious effort, is encourage your own breathing to deepen. When a sentence is long, when it flows without breaking, when it continues and continues, allowing the thought to develop fully before reaching its conclusion, your body begins to mirror that flow. Your diaphragm, the large dome-shaped muscle beneath your lungs that controls your breath, that moves down when you inhale and up when you exhale, begins to move more slowly, more deeply, drawing air down into the lower parts of your lungs where oxygen exchange is most efficient, where the tiny alveoli can do their work of transferring oxygen into your bloodstream and removing carbon dioxide. This is diaphragmatic breathing, the kind of breathing that activates the vagus nerve, that long wandering nerve that runs from your brainstem down through your chest and abdomen, touching your heart and your lungs and your digestive organs, sending signals throughout your body that influence everything from heart rate to digestion to inflammation to mood. The vagus nerve is one of the most important pathways for activating the parasympathetic nervous system, for telling your body that it is time to rest, time to heal, time to restore. And when you breathe deeply, when your diaphragm moves fully and completely, when your breath reaches all the way down into the bottom of your lungs, the vagus nerve is stimulated, activated, encouraged to send its calming signals throughout your entire system. You do not need to consciously try to breathe deeply. The language itself is doing that work for you, inviting your breath to slow and deepen simply by providing a rhythm that your body wants to follow, simply by creating sentences that are long enough to match the natural cycle of a deep breath, simply by refusing to rush, by allowing space, by demonstrating through its own pace that there is time, that there is no urgency, that everything can happen slowly and still be perfect. This is linguistic mimicry of the breath, where the structure of speech becomes a model for the body's own rhythm, where the voice and the breath move together in a dance that requires no effort, no intention, only listening and allowing. And between these long, flowing clauses, there are pauses, moments of silence that are just as important as the words themselves, perhaps even more important. These pauses mirror the natural gaps in a deep sleep cycle, the moments between breaths when the lungs are full and still, when the body pauses before beginning the exhale, or when the lungs are empty and still, when the body pauses before beginning the next inhale. Those moments of stillness, those gaps in the breathing cycle, are where the deepest rest happens, where the body is not actively doing anything but simply being, simply existing in the space between effort and release. When you hear a pause in the narrative, when the voice stops for a moment and allows silence to fill the space, your brain does not interpret it as an interruption or a mistake. It interprets it as a natural part of the rhythm, a place where the mind can catch up, where the body can settle, where the nervous system can integrate what it has just heard without needing to immediately prepare for what comes next. These strategic silences are not accidents. They are invitations, opportunities for your own internal monologue, that constant stream of thoughts that usually fills your mind, to quiet, to slow, to thin like a stream that is running out of water, growing quieter and quieter until it is barely a trickle. And then, eventually, just stillness, just the empty streambed where water used to flow, but now there is only silence and space. The way pauses are placed between phrases creates a rhythm that the body recognizes as restful, as natural, as safe. It is the rhythm of the earth itself, the alternation between sound and silence, between motion and stillness, between activity and rest, between waking and sleeping. Everything in nature follows this pattern. The day gives way to night. The tide comes in and goes out. The seasons cycle from growth to dormancy and back to growth again. And in following that rhythm, in allowing the pauses to be as important as the words, in trusting the silence as much as the sound, your body finds its way back to its own deepest patterns of rest, to the ancient cycles that have governed life since the beginning, to the understanding that rest is not an absence of something, but a presence of something else, a presence of quiet, of stillness, of the deep peace that lives in the spaces between. What is also happening, as this voice continues to speak, as these sounds continue to arrive, as the pauses create their spaces of silence, is that your blood pressure is beginning to lower. This is not a metaphor, or a hopeful suggestion. It is a measurable physiological response to the pacing of language, to the way words are delivered, to the rhythm that is being created in this space. When your internal monologue slows down, when the constant chatter of your mind begins to quiet, when the thoughts that usually race through your head like traffic on a busy highway begin to thin out and slow down and eventually stop, your cardiovascular system responds by relaxing. The blood vessels that have been holding tension, that have been slightly constricted in response to the demands of the day, in response to stress and deadlines and the need to stay alert and responsive, begin to dilate, to open, allowing blood to flow more freely through them, reducing the pressure against the walls of the arteries. This is how verbal pacing can physically lower blood pressure. It is not magic. It is biology responding to the environment that language creates. When the voice is slow, when it does not demand, when it allows space and time, when it creates an atmosphere of safety and calm, the body interprets this as a signal that there is no need for the heightened alertness that comes with elevated blood pressure. The heart does not need to pump as forcefully. The vessels do not need to stay constricted and ready for action. Everything can soften, can ease, can relax into a state where circulation becomes gentle and efficient rather than urgent and defensive. And in that softening, the entire body begins to feel heavier, warmer, more at ease, as though the very weight of your limbs is increasing, as though gravity is pulling you down into rest with a force that feels almost comforting, almost like an embrace. Your arms feel heavy. Your legs feel heavy. Your head feels heavy on the pillow. And this heaviness is not burden. It is release. It is the body letting go of the tension it has been holding, letting go of the readiness it has been maintaining, letting go of the vigilance it has been sustaining, and allowing itself to sink, to settle, to rest. And as your body continues this work, as your breath deepens and your heart slows and your blood pressure lowers and your limbs grow heavy with the weight of relaxation, something is shifting in the quality of your awareness, in the way you are experiencing this moment. You are moving from active listening, where you are consciously tracking every word and trying to make sense of it, trying to follow the thread of meaning, trying to understand and remember, to passive absorption, where the words are simply washing over you, where you are no longer trying to hold on to anything, no longer trying to analyze or evaluate, no longer trying to stay engaged in the way you would stay engaged with something that required your full attention. This is the transition into theta wave activity, a state where the brain begins to produce slower electrical rhythms, rhythms that are measured at 4 to 8 cycles per second, rhythms that are associated with deep relaxation, with meditation, with the hypnagogic state that exists between waking and sleeping, that dreamlike space where images begin to appear unbidden, where thoughts become strange and nonlinear, where the boundaries between self and world begin to dissolve. In this state, the mind becomes more receptive, more open, less critical, less concerned with logic or sequence or making sense of things in the usual way. You are no longer listening to extract information or to learn something that you will need to remember later. You are listening to feel, to experience, to allow the sound to become a kind of presence that fills the space around you and within you, that becomes part of the atmosphere, part of the texture of this moment. The subconscious mind, which has been quietly watching all along, which has been operating beneath the surface of your awareness, managing all the functions of your body, all the processes that happen without your conscious control, begins to take over, begins to process the sounds and the rhythms in ways that do not require conscious effort, in ways that happen automatically, instinctively, the way your heart beats without you telling it to, the way your lungs breathe without you having to remember. And in that takeover, the conscious mind, the part of you that has been trying to stay in control, that has been managing and directing and deciding all day long, begins to let go, begins to drift, begins to trust that it does not need to be in charge anymore, that it is safe to sink into the theta waves and allow the deeper parts of the self to guide the way into sleep. The absence of harsh plosives in this narrative, The absence of those hard consonants that pop and snap, that create little explosions of sound in the air, is not an accident or a coincidence. It is a deliberate choice to create a frictionless mental environment, a space where nothing jolts you, where nothing pulls you back toward alertness, where everything flows smoothly from one moment to the next, like water flowing downhill, finding the path of least resistance, following the contours of the land without effort. Harsh plosives, sounds like P and T and K and B and D and G, these sounds require a buildup of pressure in the mouth and a sudden release, and that sudden release can feel like a tiny shock to the nervous system, a small reminder that something is happening, that attention is required, that there is an event occurring that might need a response. But in bedtime storytelling, in narratives designed to guide you into sleep rather than to wake you up or keep you alert, those sounds are avoided, or if they must be used because the meaning of the words requires them, they are softened, surrounded by gentler sounds that cushion their impact, that prevent them from feeling sharp or startling. What this creates is an environment where the mind does not need to brace itself, does not need to prepare for anything unexpected, does not need to maintain a baseline level of readiness just in case something important happens. The path is smooth. The journey is gentle. There are no obstacles, no bumps, no surprises, no sudden changes in direction or tone or volume. And in that smoothness, in that frictionless quality, the mind finds it easier and easier to let go, to stop holding on, to stop trying to stay present and alert, and to simply drift away into the softness that is waiting just beyond the edge of consciousness, just past the border of waking, in that territory where sleep begins and dreams emerge, and the self dissolves into something larger and quieter and more peaceful than the busy, effortful consciousness of the waking day. And now, as we move deeper into this exploration, as your body continues to soften and your mind continues to drift, as the sounds and the rhythms work their gentle magic on your nervous system, we turn our attention to the forest itself, to the hidden world beneath your feet, to the silent conversations happening in the soil, conversations that have been taking place for hundreds of millions of years, conversations that mirror your own deepest need for connection and support and belonging. Deep beneath the forest floor, where the light never reaches, where the air is still and cool and rich with the smell of earth, something extraordinary is taking place, something that scientists have only recently begun to understand, even though it has been happening for as long as forests have existed on this planet. Ancient mother trees, the oldest and largest trees in the forest, the ones who have stood for decades or centuries, who have weathered storms and droughts and fires and the slow turning of seasons, are not standing alone in isolated grandeur, separate and independent and self-sufficient. They are connected, deeply and intimately connected, to the younger trees around them, to the saplings that are just beginning their lives, struggling to find light and nutrients in the crowded understory where the canopy blocks the sun and the soil is thin and competition is fierce. And these mother trees are doing something that looks remarkably like care, like nurturing, like a form of attachment and parenting that predates humanity by millions of years, that existed long before mammals walked the earth, long before anything that we would recognize as motherhood or family or community. Through an underground network of fungal threads, through the mycorrhizal connections that weave through the soil like a vast neural network, like an internet made of living cells rather than wires and signals, these mother trees are sending chemical pulses, nutrients, sugars produced through photosynthesis, water drawn up from deep in the earth, minerals extracted from the rock and soil directly to their offspring, to the young trees that need support, that are not yet strong enough to survive on their own, that would die in the shade without help from their elders. This is not metaphor. This is not poetic language imposed on nature by human imagination. This is measurable, observable biology, documented by scientists who have traced the flow of carbon isotopes through the network, who have watched nutrients move from large trees to small ones, who have seen that the mother trees are literally feeding their young, ensuring that they have what they need to grow, to thrive, to eventually take their place in the canopy when the mother tree herself finally falls. What makes this so fascinating, so quietly profound and moving, is that it mirrors the very principles of attachment theory, the psychological framework developed by studying how human infants develop bonds with their caregivers, how those early relationships shape the capacity for trust and security and resilience throughout life. Attachment theory tells us that survival and health depend on connection, on the presence of a secure base, on the knowledge that you are not alone, that there is someone who will respond to your needs, who will support you when you cannot support yourself, who will be there when you are vulnerable and afraid and unable to cope. And here in the forest, we see the same pattern playing out, not through words or touch or the complex social behaviors of mammals, but through chemistry, through the silent transfer of resources from one generation to the next, from the strong to the vulnerable, from the established to the emerging. The mother trees are practicing a form of attachment that is written into their very biology, that is as fundamental to their survival as photosynthesis or respiration, that is built into the architecture of the forest itself. They are ensuring that the forest continues, that the next generation has what it needs, that no young tree is left to struggle alone in the dark understory without help, without support, without the resources that mean the difference between life and death. And in doing so, they are demonstrating a truth that applies not just to trees, but to all living things, to every organism that has ever existed in community with others, that connection is not a luxury or a pleasant addition to life. It is a necessity. It is the foundation of survival. It is how life perpetuates itself across time. We survive not through isolation, but through relationship, through the quiet, steady support that flows between us when we are willing to give and to receive, when we are willing to be vulnerable enough to ask for help and generous enough to offer it, when we understand that our own well-being is inseparable from the well-being of those around us, that we are all part of a larger web of interdependence that holds us all. As you listen to this, as you allow these ideas to settle into your awareness, sinking down through the layers of thought like rain sinking into soil, perhaps you can begin to let these ancestral rhythms synchronize with your own breathing, with your own heartbeat, with your own deep need for rest and restoration. The forest does not hurry. It does not rush. It does not operate on human timescales where everything must happen quickly, where results must be immediate, where patience is seen as weakness or delay. The forest operates on timescales that dwarf the human experience, where a year is barely a blink, where growth happens slowly, steadily, patiently, where a tree might take decades to reach maturity and then stand for centuries more, slowly accumulating wisdom in its rings, slowly expanding its roots deeper and wider into the earth. And in that slowness, in that patience, in that willingness to take the time that things actually take rather than the time we wish they would take, there is a kind of wisdom, a reminder that not everything needs to happen quickly, that some of the most important processes in life unfold over time, quietly, without fanfare, without urgency, without the pressure to rush or force or make things happen before they are ready. The mother trees do not send their nutrients in a sudden flood, all at once, overwhelming the young saplings with more than they can use. They send them in gentle, continuous pulses, a steady flow of support that matches the needs of the young trees, that arrives when it is needed, in the amount that is needed, without overwhelming, without forcing, without trying to make the saplings grow faster than they are capable of growing. This is the rhythm of care, the rhythm of attachment, the rhythm that your own body recognizes and responds to, the rhythm that invites you to let go of the day's demands and sink into the deep restoration that sleep provides. Let the forest teach you. Let its ancient patterns guide you. Let the knowledge that connection is woven into the very fabric of life, that it is not something you have to create or manufacture or struggle to achieve, but something that already exists, something that has always existed, something that is fundamental to the nature of existence itself. Ease your mind and soften your body, allowing you to trust that you too are supported, that you too are part of a larger web of care, even when you cannot see it, even when you are alone in the dark, resting. Breathing, healing, allowing sleep to find you. As you listen to this, As you allow these ideas to settle into your awareness, sinking down through the layers of thought like rain sinking into soil, perhaps you can begin to let these ancestral rhythms synchronize with your own breathing, with your own heartbeat, with your own deep need for rest and restoration. The forest does not hurry. It does not rush. It does not operate on human timescales where everything must happen quickly, where results must be immediate, where patience is seen as weakness or delay. The forest operates on timescales that dwarf the human experience, where a year is barely a blink, where growth happens slowly, steadily, patiently, where a tree might take decades to reach maturity and then stand for centuries more, slowly accumulating wisdom in its rings, slowly expanding its roots deeper and wider into the earth. And in that slowness, in that patience, in that willingness to take the time that things actually take rather than the time we wish they would take, there is a kind of wisdom, a reminder that not everything needs to happen quickly, that some of the most important processes in life unfold over time, quietly, without fanfare, without urgency, without the pressure to rush or force or make things happen before they are ready. The mother trees do not send their nutrients in a sudden flood, all at once, overwhelming the young saplings with more than they can use. They send them in gentle, continuous pulses, a steady flow of support that matches the needs of the young trees, that arrives when it is needed, in the amount that is needed, without overwhelming, without forcing, without trying to make the saplings grow faster than they are capable of growing. This is the rhythm of care, the rhythm of attachment, the rhythm that your own body recognizes and responds to, the rhythm that invites you to let go of the day's demands and sink into the deep restoration that sleep provides. Let the forest teach you. Let its ancient patterns guide you. Let the knowledge that connection is woven into the very fabric of life, that it is not something you have to create or manufacture or struggle to achieve, but something that already exists, something that has always existed, something that is fundamental to the nature of existence itself. Ease your mind and soften your body, allowing you to trust that you too are supported, that you too are part of a larger web of care, even when you cannot see it, even when you are alone in the dark, resting. Breathing, healing, allowing sleep to find you. This is why forest bathing, the practice of simply being present in a forest, of walking slowly through the trees, of breathing the air, of allowing your senses to absorb the sights and sounds and smells of the woodland, has become recognized as a legitimate therapeutic intervention in some parts of the world, particularly in Japan, where it is called Shinrin-yoku and is prescribed by doctors as a way to reduce stress, lower blood pressure, improve immune function, and restore mental and physical health. It is not folklore. It is not superstition. It is not the product of wishful thinking or placebo effects, although those can certainly contribute to the experience. It is physiology. It is measurable, repeatable, scientifically documented changes in the body's chemistry and function in response to exposure to the forest environment. The trees are releasing their breath into the air, their defensive compounds, their phytoncides, and when you receive that breath, when you allow it into your body, when you walk through the forest breathing deeply and slowly, you are participating in an exchange that has been happening for as long as trees and animals have coexisted on this planet, for hundreds of millions of years. Your nervous system knows how to respond to phytoncides. It has known for millions of years, long before humans evolved, long before primates or mammals or any of your ancestors existed in their current form. It recognizes them as signals of safety, as indicators that the environment is healthy, that there are trees here producing oxygen and cleaning the air, that there is life thriving all around you, that the world is functioning as it should, that there is no immediate danger, that resources are abundant, that you can afford to lower your guard and redirect your energy from vigilance to restoration. And in response to those signals, your body begins to let go of its defensive posture, begins to release the tension it has been holding in your muscles and your jaw and your shoulders, begins to trust that it can lower its production of stress hormones, that it can allow your heart rate to slow, that it can permit your blood pressure to drop, that it can activate the healing and repair processes that only happen when the body believes it is truly safe, truly out of danger, truly able to rest. Tonight, as you listen, as you imagine the forest around you, as you allow these words to carry you deeper into calm, you are tapping into that same ancient response, that same recognition that when the environment speaks of safety, when the air itself carries the message that all is well, the body is free to rest, free to heal, free to let go of the day and sink into the restorative darkness of sleep. The symbiosis of the forest ecosystem, the intricate web of relationships between trees and fungi, between plants and insects, between predators and prey, between the living and the dead and the decaying and the emerging, all of it provides a blueprint for understanding how survival works, how thriving works, how life sustains itself across time, not through competition alone, not through the ruthless individual struggle that we sometimes imagine when we think of nature red in tooth and claw, but through cooperation, through mutual support, through networks of exchange that benefit everyone involved, that create stability and resilience, and the capacity to weather storms and droughts and all the challenges that the environment throws at living systems. In the forest, no tree truly stands alone, isolated and independent and self-sufficient. Even the tallest, strongest tree, the one that seems to dominate the canopy, the one that captures the most sunlight and produces the most seeds, is connected to others through the mycorrhizal network, that underground web of fungal threads that links tree to tree, sometimes across great distances, creating what some scientists have called the wood wide web, a communication network that allows trees to share resources, to send warnings about insect attacks, to support each other in times of stress, to redistribute nutrients from areas of abundance to areas of scarcity. This network is so extensive, so deeply woven into the fabric of the forest, that a single spoonful of forest soil can contain miles and miles of fungal filaments, thread-like hyphae that branch and weave and connect, all working quietly beneath the surface, all facilitating the exchange of nutrients, all ensuring that the forest as a whole remains healthy and resilient. That the community of trees can survive together even when individual trees face challenges that might kill them if they were truly alone. The trees provide the fungi with sugars, with carbohydrates, with the products of photosynthesis that fungi cannot create on their own because they lack chlorophyll, because they cannot harness the energy of the sun the way plants can. In return, the fungi provide the trees with water and minerals, with nitrogen and phosphorus and all the nutrients that are locked up in the soil and the rock, nutrients that the tree roots alone could never reach, could never access, could never extract without the help of the fungal network that extends far beyond the reach of the roots themselves, that penetrates into tiny crevices in the rock, that breaks down organic matter and makes its nutrients available. That acts as an extension of the tree's own root system, multiplying its surface area many times over. It is a partnership built on mutual benefit, on the recognition that together, both can thrive in ways that neither could alone, that their survival and success are intertwined, that they need each other, that they are stronger and more resilient and more capable as a team than they could ever be as isolated individuals. And this is the perfect blueprint for your sleep, for the way your own body works when it is functioning at its best, when all the systems are communicating and cooperating and supporting each other. Your body is not a single entity acting alone, not a simple machine with one function and one purpose. It is a community, a collection of systems and organs and tissues and cells that must work together, that must support each other, that must communicate and coordinate in order for you to survive and thrive. Your nervous system talks to your endocrine system, sending signals that trigger the release of hormones. Your immune system talks to your digestive system, influencing what happens in your gut. Your heart talks to your lungs, coordinating the delivery of oxygen to your tissues. And all of them are listening to the signals from the environment, from the sounds you hear, from the light you see, from the air you breathe, from the temperature of the room, from the position of your body, from everything that your senses detect, trying to determine whether it is safe to rest or whether vigilance is required, whether the body can afford to redirect resources to healing and repair, or whether it needs to maintain readiness for threat and challenge. When those signals say safety, When they say connection, when they say support, when they say you are not alone, when they say the environment is stable and nurturing and kind, the body responds by entering a state of symbiosis within itself, where all the systems work together smoothly, where resources are shared efficiently, where inflammation decreases and repair increases, where the chemistry of stress gives way to the chemistry of restoration, where cortisol levels drop and melatonin levels rise, where heart rate slows and blood pressure lowers, where breathing deepens and muscles release their tension, where the mind stops racing and the thoughts slow down, and consciousness begins to thin and dissolve like mist burning off a lake in the morning sun. This is what sleep is. It is your body's opportunity to engage in the kind of deep cooperation that keeps you healthy, that keeps you resilient, that keeps you capable of facing the challenges of life, that allows you to wake each morning with the strength and energy and clarity to begin again. And just as the forest thrives through its network of connections, just as no tree is left to struggle in isolation, just as the mother trees feed the saplings and the fungi connect everything together in a web of mutual support, you too are never truly alone when you understand that your body is designed for this, designed to rest, designed to heal, designed to participate in the ancient rhythms of life that connect you to every living thing that has ever needed to sleep, to restore, to let go of consciousness and sink into the restorative darkness where healing happens. The mycorrhizal network ensures that no tree struggles in isolation, that even the weakest sapling, the one growing in the deepest shade where almost no light penetrates, the one with the poorest soil and the least access to water, receives what it needs to survive because the network redistributes resources, sending nutrients from where they are abundant to where they are scarce, moving sugars from trees that have more than they need to trees that are starving, transferring water from deep roots to shallow ones, creating a kind of socialism of the forest where the strong support the weak not out of altruism or moral choice, but because that is how the system works, that is how the forest survives as a whole, that is how the community persists across time, even as individual trees are born and grow and die and fall and decompose and return their nutrients to the soil to feed the next generation. This is collective survival. This is nature's highest law, not the survival of the fittest in the sense of ruthless competition where only the strongest individuals live and the weak are left to perish, but the survival of the connected, the survival of those who are willing to give and to receive, to support and to be supported, to recognize that their own well-being is tied inextricably to the well-being of the whole, that they cannot thrive alone, that their success depends on the health of the community, that the forest is stronger when every tree has what it needs, when diversity is maintained, when the young are protected and the old are honored and the resources are shared. And this truth, this soothing reality of deep-rooted resilience, this understanding that cooperation is fundamental to life, that connection is not a weakness but a strength, that no one survives alone, can guide your mind into a peaceful, undisturbed slumber because it reminds you that you do not need to carry everything alone, that you do not need to solve every problem or manage every stress or handle every challenge by yourself before you are allowed to rest. The forest teaches that rest is not something you earn through exhaustion, not a reward that comes only after you have depleted yourself completely, not a luxury that you must justify or deserve. Rest is something you allow through trust, through the recognition that there are forces larger than yourself at work, forces that are holding the world together, forces that will continue to operate even when you close your eyes and let go, even when you stop trying to control everything, even when you surrender to sleep and trust that you will wake again, that the sun will rise, that life will continue, that you are part of a web of support that extends far beyond what you can see or understand. The roots of the trees go deep, deeper than you can see, deeper than the height of the tree itself sometimes, anchoring them in the earth, connecting them to the bedrock, to the water table, to the fungal network, giving them access to resources that are hidden from view but always present, always available, always flowing through the system. Your own deep roots, your own connections, your own sources of support, they are there too, even when you cannot see them, even when you feel alone in the dark, even when it seems like you are carrying everything by yourself. There are people who love you, people who would help you if you asked, people who are thinking of you even now, holding you in their thoughts. There are systems that support you, infrastructure and institutions, and the accumulated work of generations that provides you with shelter and food and safety. There are biological processes operating in your body right now without your conscious awareness, healing and repairing and maintaining, keeping you alive, keeping you functioning, working tirelessly on your behalf. You are held by so much more than you realize. You are supported by a network that extends in all directions, through time and space, connecting you to everything and everyone, past and present and future. Let the knowledge of this network, this ancient web of care that has been operating beneath the forest floor for hundreds of millions of years, longer than almost any other system on Earth, ease the part of your mind that believes it must stay alert, that believes rest is unsafe, that believes letting go means losing control, that believes you have to manage everything yourself or it will all fall apart. The forest lets go every autumn, releasing its leaves, allowing the old growth to fall away, trusting that spring will come again, that new growth will emerge, that the cycle will continue as it always has. And in that letting go, the forest does not weaken. It strengthens. It prepares. It rests. The trees redirect their energy inward, down into the roots, into storage, into the deep reserves that will sustain them through winter and fuel the explosion of growth that comes when the warmth returns. And you can do the same. You can release the day, release the thoughts that have been circling through your mind, release the tension that has been held in your muscles, release the need to figure everything out or solve everything or control everything, trusting that tomorrow will come, that you will wake, that the cycle will continue, and that for now, in this moment, there is nothing more important than allowing your body to sink into the deep, restorative rest it needs. The mycorrhizal network does not sleep, but it slows at night, it quiets, it shifts into a different rhythm, a rhythm that matches the darkness, that matches the stillness, that matches the profound peace that settles over the forest when the sun goes down and the day creatures return to their nests and burrows and dens, and the night becomes a sanctuary for rest and regeneration, for the quiet work of healing that happens when the world grows dark and still. Let that rhythm become your rhythm. Let the forest's peace become your peace. Let the deep roots hold you as you drift, knowing that you are connected, knowing that you are supported, knowing that you are safe, that you can let go now, that you can trust the darkness, that you can surrender to sleep without fear, without resistance, without the need to hold on, because you are held, because the network is there, because you are not alone and never have been and never will be, because connection is the truth of existence. And in that truth, in that deep knowing, you can finally fully, completely rest. As we reach the end of our journey tonight, you might notice how wide and quietly connected this world has become. How the sounds that you have been hearing, the O and the U, the soft S and the gentle rhythms, are not separate from the forest, not separate from the mycorrhizal network, not separate from the ancient wisdom of attachment and connection that runs through every living thing, from the smallest microbe to the largest tree, from the briefest mayfly to the longest-lived organism on Earth. It is all part of the same truth, the truth that life is woven together, that nothing exists in isolation, that every organism depends on others, that the very structure of existence is relationship, is exchange, is the quiet giving and receiving that keeps everything alive and thriving. The forest breathes out phytoncides, and you breathe them in, and your body responds with calm. The mother trees send nutrients through the fungal web, and the saplings receive them and grow stronger. Your body hears the slow rhythm of language, and your heart slows to match it. Your breath deepens, your muscles release. Everything is connected. Everything is speaking. Everything is listening. And in that conversation, in that endless exchange of signals and responses, of giving and receiving, of supporting and being supported, you find your place, your moment of rest, your permission to let go. Now that knowledge can soften. You do not need to remember every detail or name, every fact about phytoncides or mycorrhizae, or the structure of the cochlea, or the function of the vagus nerve. Let the ideas settle like fallen leaves on the forest floor, slowly decomposing, slowly becoming part of the soil, slowly feeding the roots of something new that will grow when the time is right, when the season turns, when the conditions are perfect. Let the forest hold this knowing for you. Let the trees carry the memory of connection while you drift into the place where memories dissolve and only presence remains, where there is no past and no future, only this moment, this breath, this soft slide into sleep. The forest remembers. The network remembers. The ancient patterns remember. And they will still be there tomorrow, still operating, still supporting, still demonstrating the truth that we are all connected, that we all depend on each other, that survival is collective, that thriving is cooperative, that love, in its deepest and most fundamental form, is written into the structure of life itself. If you have enjoyed drifting through this gentle journey, you are always welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a quiet thought below. It helps this space reach other curious minds who might be winding down too, who might be searching for the same peace, the same permission to rest, the same reminder that they are not alone in the dark, that they are part of something larger, something older, something wiser than their individual struggles and fears. And if you happen to still be awake, if some part of your mind is still holding on, still listening, there will be another video waiting on the screen, ready to carry you a little further into calm and curiosity, ready to offer another pathway into the deep rest you deserve, another invitation to let go, another opportunity to trust the darkness and surrender to sleep. But for now, there is nothing else to do. Let your breathing slow, matching the breath of the forest, the invisible exhalation of trees that has been purifying the air for millennia, creating the oxygen you breathe, sustaining all animal life on Earth through their generous, endless production of the very substance you need to live. Let your shoulders sink, releasing the weight they have been carrying, all the responsibilities and worries and tasks and concerns, letting them fall away like leaves falling from branches, returning to the earth, returning to the source, being absorbed back into the great cycle of life and death and renewal. Allow the day to loosen its grip, knowing you can return to these ideas whenever you wish, knowing the forest will still be there, still breathing, still connected, still demonstrating the ancient art of thriving through relationship, still teaching anyone who cares to listen that we are strongest when we are together, that we are safest when we support each other, that the deepest truth of existence is not separation, but connection, not isolation, but community, not independence, but interdependence. Let insight heal you into sleep. Let the wisdom of the forest, the patience of the trees, the generosity of the mother trees, the vast underground network of support and communication and resource sharing, let all of it remind you that you can rest, that you are allowed to rest. That rest is not weakness, but wisdom, not laziness, but necessity, not escape, but restoration. Sleep well and good night.